Hello again, and welcome to today's webinar, Migrating or Integrating Your FileNet Repository. My name is Purdy Horbach, and I'll be moderating today's call. With me is Sjoerd Alkema. He's Head of Professional Services here at Xillio. Today we will talk about what to do with your FileNet installation, should you migrate or integrate. If you have any questions during any time of today's call, let us know. You can simply type your question into the chat box, which is on your right hand side of your screen. We will answer your questions after the call. But if somehow we're not able to answer all your questions, we will get back to you after the call today. Finally, today's session will be recorded. We will send you this recording and the presentation in the next couple of days. So, with that, I'm going to hand things over to Sjoerd, and we can get started.
All right, thank you, Purdy. Welcome, everybody. So my name is Sjoerd, indeed, as Purdy already introduced me. I have also some slides to introduce quickly myself. I have around 12 years of ECM consultancy experience at Unisys, Capgemini, and Xillio. So I've been working also with IBM FileNet quite a lot with Capgemini, because I was responsible for our ECM propositions in the Netherlands. That's actually where also Xillio is located for the head office. So in that time, I encountered all the large ECM vendors and spoke a lot with them on their strategies and how they saw the market. And that's actually still what I'm doing here with Xillio, only from a little bit of a different angle. So as you know, this webinar is about integration and migrations, and that's exactly what we are doing here at Xillio. We have our own software developed, and we use it from our professional services team to do many migrations and integrations around the world. And also our software is used by partners, which are mostly large system integrators. So the webinar agenda, so the introduction has been done, I think. I want to start with the ECM market, which is changing quite heavily lately, we feel. Then I want to touch base on IBM ECM. What's my perspective on this? What do I see happening there with their solution stack, with their suite? And then, of course, we wanted to, that's what this webinar is about migrations from or to FileNet, or maybe even integrations with FileNet as a repository. I'll end with a summary of everything that has been discussed, and of course there must be some time left for questions. But as Purdy already mentioned, questions you can ask questions anytime during the session. So the ECM market, or as it's now called content services, platforms and applications market, recently, or not even that recent anymore, but beginning of this year, it was announced by Gartner that they are moving away from the term ECM and introducing content services. It was even December last year. Since then, I've been working on this and with this concept a lot, and talked about with different experts, and I think they are very right with this. It is really where the future is going. The API-oriented world is where also the old ECM market will be heading. So this means that apps and repositories and services around that are kind of three panes you can see separately from each other. One of the companies I think that has a very good vision on this is mFiles. It's not specifically on the content services, but they do. Their vision does say it is not so much one suite of one vendor that you need in your organization to have everything efficiently organized. You just need maybe one point of view sometimes, and we can be that point of view. So as mFiles calls it, they have the intelligent metadata layer, where they can connect to other repositories and get that content within their view, still being in the other repositories, but with the metadata and with the look and feel you are used as a customer. So that's really one of the apps that is connected to different repositories then. And also enterprise file share and sync. They have been disrupting the classic ECM market, I feel, and this also means there are just more systems in your organization where you have to deal with. They are all used, but you do need some governance overall. So that is also one of the disruptors. And I feel that Leap is really something that is the how do you say that they were in. Oh, it's this. Sorry, we have some. Yeah, it's better now.
Somebody unmuted.
Yeah, no problem. So Leap is, of course, Leap is now open text. That's really the vision of the content services architecture, and I think this is then from one application, but this is really where the market is headed. So organizations are realizing that it's about using and optimizing content, and not so much only about storing it and storing it in the right way. It's really about the usage, and that is why it's now time to free your content. With this, freeing your content, there will be a need still for migrations, right? Because applications change, landscape is still growing and becoming more diverse. So in a way, migrations will remain necessary. However, content integrations will be more essential even to keep up with this changing content services needs. I think it is key to delivering in this market where we are now an agile digital workplace. And this is what Gartner introduced, this content services architecture. And yeah, more and more I see also organizations moving towards this for one business process or one user application. Not that they implemented this architecture fully for other content centric and content processes, but I see more and more that these kind of structures arise. So you have the applications pane and the platforms. You can see that as, for instance, an old FileNet repository. You can really see as a platform where there are some foundational services as retention management or versioning even. And you have a components pane where what you can see as microservices that can be incorporated within the application that you create for your user process or for your business process. Where we as Xillio are is exactly in these interconnections. So we provide connectors to all the main platforms. We provide an API to build your own in-context app on. And with that API, you can talk to all the platforms that are out there through our connectors. And also we make it possible to incorporate other microservices. Say you want image classification, or you want to create a PDFA, or you want a simple thing as OCR. That is something you can incorporate in the process, but it must be there as a component there, of course, somewhere. So Gartner recognized these capabilities. Of course, we fit in their picture very well. So we are recognized as a cool vendor, of which we are very proud. Then this webinar is about FileNet. FileNet we encounter still a lot out there, also as a target environment, I have to say. So this is not about moving away from FileNet. It is about what can you do with your FileNet repository. It's definitely also migrating into FileNet. So I've looked into the suite right now and talked to some of my old colleagues that are very well known in the IBM ECM area, and these are some of the applications they have. And I think it's interesting also to mention this Workplace XT kind of interface on the old FileNet, or not old, but FileNet repository, can be FileNet P8. But we have still clients here in Holland that are using this. Of course, it's not the most modern and probably not the most efficient interface out there. So also Content Navigator, of course, is I think that's quite a good interface. That is you can also use on your mobile, and is used also quite a lot on FileNet implementations here. Then I've actually in my former Capgemini years done some implementations of Case Manager, which I think is a very strong package. Also, of course, running in a basis for their content on IBM FileNet. Actually, we are migrating into Case Manager as we speak with one of the largest ministries here in Holland. Then I also know this product quite well. So their information lifecycle governance. It's not even a product; it's more a concept. So many products are beneath that. Here in the Netherlands, maybe someone else can say differently, but here in the Netherlands and Europe, this didn't really go well. I mean, the story is of course very, very, very good. So you need to be in control of all your data. There are a lot of redundant, obsolete, and trivial content is out there. So why don't you clean up and assess and protect and privacy assessments and stuff? But that whole program didn't really take off here. I've tried it myself with my former job, but we couldn't really get foot on the ground. Then content analytics and the Watson capabilities, of course, those are really products that are still out there and have had a lot of focus. I think mostly the focus has been on these two solutions, and both I don't know if they are really paying off yet here in Europe. Of course, lately, connections and box has been introduced quite some time ago already, of course. We have seen some implementations here. Seems to be doing quite well. I'm very interested in hearing if anyone in the call has these implementations or is thinking of it. Also an interesting development that they started to work with Box, of course, as an enterprise file share and sync solution. So my thoughts on the suite. I do feel there is a focus on Box and cloud, and also the Box integration with Case Manager, Data Cap, Content Navigator, Content Manager on demand, so almost everything, and of course with connections. So that has quite strong focus. Content Analytics and Case Manager, where FileNet is foundational, of course, still, at least here in the Netherlands, have quite the attention, and I see Case Manager more and more being used as the new kind of FileNet environment. So the ILG suite, like I discussed, it's not really a success here in Europe, so maybe also less focus right now. And they are also moving towards this more content services architecture, but maybe not as strong as others. So as EMC was with Leap, I'm not really seeing this vision yet within IBM that they have this content app creation platform. If somebody else knows it, then or knows of a roadmap where it is, please let me know. I see still a lot of, also in the UK and the US, still a lot of content manager on demand solutions, and remains their solution for static content. quick access, of course, and highly scalable. And of course, FileNet, it will stay, shifting a little bit toward more being a content repository and the foundational ECM functions. And of course, also accessible from the cloud, or you can get it from the cloud. So FileNet as a repository, it's really strong, and it probably will be for the future. And it fits in the content services architecture, but it's then only really the repository. So from our experience here, what we have been doing, we still see many consolidations towards the FileNet platform, but that's then really consolidation of more legacy kind of products. And also we see moving to case manager, and that can be also file shares that everybody has worked their cases on, and they need to move that to case manager. So we're doing actually a migration on that right now. So we have currently around 3 projects running around FileNet. And then also we see integration scenarios. It can be that there is an archive and everything is implemented well, but the interface is something that people don't want to work with, and they only work with SharePoint. Then you can think of integrating your FileNet or your Content Manager on Demand archive with this front end like SharePoint. I'll get to this in more detail later. So migrating from to or integrating with FileNet, how we see that. Of course, we have very extended approaches and a lot of experience with it, but I'll stay very high level and conceptual here. But first, let's see why it is needed more than ever. It's because, of course, ECM technologies have been around for decades, and this heritage and silos are everywhere out there in companies, and they need to be either migrated to the new environment or new archives, more efficient archives maybe, or integrated if you need a user that if you need a environment where users work in that has access to all the old files that are in the archives. Okay, I see some questions coming in. Very good. I'll get to these later on in the presentation. So migrating. Some thoughts on migrating. We see a migration all the time as an as an opportunity to improve your content management, to increase productivity, to create better compliancy and even lower costs. Of course, it's not only about the migration then. You also need a target system that provides these better compliancy or lower costs. But as we migrate, we always take into account that we deliver that in a new system. For instance, we make sure we add valuable metadata. We make sure that all the retentions are brought over in the right way, or even added if they're not there. And that's how we always take the opportunity to improve. We see it as an ability to make a new strategic choice for your organization. And also right now, if you think of the new content applications architecture, it's the ability to move towards that. I specifically want to say, if you have a really customized workplace, XT implementations, for instance, I think then you should think about migrating maybe towards case management or towards some other IBM product, or maybe something else completely, but that's kind of legacy. Support in FileNet is almost everything, actually everything. So we have done many migrations, and as I just mentioned, we're running some right now where we can create with our connectors anything in FileNet. So also to the records management part of it. We've got a proven approach. It's quite simple, as it were. So you start with an extraction and analysis. We really use the analysis to finalize our migration plan, to know what kind of content is there, the amount of content, what the quality is. That's what we use to really define a controllable and detailed migration plan. And within that migration plan, we can then already see what kind of actions are necessary to determine the selection, the mapping, and the enrichment. And that's those three things we really see as the adding value part. So that's what you do, quite interactive with the business. So you determine what comes where and what needs to be enriched. Then those are built in transformation rules or transformation scripts. Those are tested, of course, and then run in the import. That's actually how we do a migration. So in a simple architecture, a migration architecture, it looks like this. You have FileNet with our Xillio out-of-the-box connector. You can select on, you do the extract, and of course then you can select on business rules what you want to have in our unified data model. That is our one data model on which all our modules run. So this means, for instance, if you want to migrate into a FileNet from several sources, you only need to create that mapping into FileNet from one time from our one data model, from our unified data model, and you can attach as many sources as you want. And you can use modules to deduplicate, restructure, transform, and auto-classify as much as you want, because everything is in our one data model. This is really one of the strongest assets of our platform. So what the Xillio platform really ensures in your migration, that you are in control of the migration process. We have it's a very open platform, so you can create a report out or some logging on any moment of the migration process, which also means it's fully auditable. So the logging is possible everywhere, and it's flexible. It's I'll come to that later, but it's the core of it and where we build our transformations is a scripting language. So say you want to incorporate another database in a CRM system, you can easily just connect to that and use that, for instance, as metadata when you migrate. That makes it very flexible. And also the flexibility is in our server environment that is fully scalable and distributed and load balanced if necessary, to really get most of the network and the capabilities that are out there. And of course, we have all the capabilities to create business rules to get, for instance, sensitive content out. And value is really what we want to add and when we migrate. Then some thoughts on integration. That is, it's quite new. Well, it's not, of course, new as a concept, but in the ECM world, to integrate these repositories with others with a layer in it, that's quite a new concept. But it's really the future. So when you start integrating and using this integration layer, we think you are ready for the future. And of course, if you have this kind of content hub or services bus within your organization, you can use it for many other optimizing interesting use cases. For instance, maybe central archiving, different content repositories or different content or originating sources that all need to go into a central archive. You can create a connector from all those sources to the archive, or you can use one layer in between. And the same with enterprise search, of course. We see it's really an architecture set for the future, and you can use it to optimize more and see more opportunities of this if you have a roadmap towards your optimized digital workplace. And of course, migration will often be a part of this. If you have this integration program, you might also need to migrate some legacy into the repository of choice here and there. So more on the why and how to migrate. So we see that enterprise file sync and share is there to stay, Box and IBM, but you do need to kind of stay in control of all these content out there. It might need to end up in an archive, for instance. So we see a growing integration need for EFS and ECM, also a sync even between those applications. But there are many more use cases, and drivers always are. Sorry. Drivers always are optimized user experience, auditability, compliancy, and process flow optimization. So how we integrate is out-of-the-box connectors, unified data model is used. That's that one data model in between. We have an ETL process there. We can do enrichment. It's fully scalable and flexible. And integration architecture, of course, is quite the same. All our connectors are bi-directional. So if you want to integrate FileNet, for instance, with another system or an application, you can use our API to talk to our data model, and that then is connected to the FileNet environment. If you want to learn more and get more detail on this, just drop me a line after this session, because there's a lot of more interesting details to tell about this. Well, one example of a use case we recently saw, it was an old archive, and it can, for instance, be a FileNet repository. But there were a lot of legacy content flows into FileNet, and also the retention management was very well implemented. So third-party invoices and third-party contracts were landing in this FileNet repository. However, the business was more and more going into SharePoint, and they created all their projects in SharePoint, and finance was also working with SharePoint, but they needed their invoices and contracts as part of their projects. So you could think, okay, we're gonna put the processes into SharePoint, so we make sure that all the invoices end up in SharePoint. Of course, that is on the long term, that is quite a good, you can really do that and then get rid of your file repository all the way. But also in this situation, the retention management was really well implemented in this repository, and they were not able to do that in SharePoint that way. So here the solution was a integration from SharePoint to their FileNet repository, where for the user it was as if they had their project and their finance overview of a client completely in one view. However, it came from their FileNet repository where the third-party processes were ending up. So a very quick look at the platform. As I mentioned already, we have our own development environment with our own language. It's called Xillio. It's where we build all our transformation scripts. So we are very flexible in doing that with any migration. And then we have our server. It has a scheduler and a distributed environment. You can schedule the scripts. You can run the scripts from a distance. And you can also scale this environment. And then we have our one data model and one API. We call it Esperanto for content sources, because you can talk to any content source if you talk through our API and data model. And then we have some intelligent modules. It's a deduplicator and versioning and the classifier. It's two we have, and it's going to remain with these because we feel we are the connecting layer. So we deliver the API and the one data model and all the connectors. But we can get intelligent services to add value anywhere. We can incorporate them in the process. So we're not going to maintain and create them all ourselves, but take the best out of the world where the best are. Connectors, we have created many connectors already, and there are many more than this picture. So to these connectors, we have to these systems, we have connectors that are built on our one data model. So if you create something on our API, you can do all the create, read, update, delete, and anything on the content in these systems, which makes it very interesting. So as a summary, if you are up for a migration or integration or questioning what you want to do with your FileNet repository, we see that a migration is always an improvement opportunity. It's really an opportunity to assess your content in the system and improve it. You can do that by adding metadata, for instance, or selecting only the valuable content you want to take over. And you, of course, will have a less complex information content landscape. So if consolidation is an option, it's always, of course, a good thing to do if the business case can be made. But also integrate. So actually, mostly this is the example I mentioned lately. When the repository is good, but not the primary interface, this might be an interesting opportunity to integrate. Of course, also if you want to deliver one point of access, efficient users with a modern interface, you can integrate all kinds of repositories and have one point of access. Keeping alive automated process that store documents in a repository, that's the example we just had. This is something I already have seen with 3 organizations, large financial institutions. That allows you to keep the strong regulatory solution you have. But also a hybrid approach is interesting. Many of these large organizations have quite a complex implementation of their repository, and you can't just consolidate or take that out of your environment. That's a very long process, and it's way easier to do if you do give your users already the access to it through the new system, through the new modern interface they want to work with. So finally, closing, before I go into the questions, having this strategy and also architecture, we think this will bring a simplified content repository landscape, improving, of course, everyone's productivity, and a massive reduction, a time reduction on your digital transformation program. This mainly is because of the integration capabilities and migration capabilities you have. Delivering as well corporate agility, right? Which is something that is necessary to be competitive nowadays. You have to be able to adapt to changing requirements on content management solutions and something new that is created that everybody wants to use very quickly to stay ahead of your competition. So this is now the end. Thank you for your attention. I will go into the questions right now. Let me see. So do we still see customers on IBM Content Manager or FileNet image services? Actually, yes. However, these I've seen it with 2 large organizations in the Netherlands, financial, and both want to move away. So we do see them, and it's a migration away from that. The major, and that's what in my opinion is the major pain point that that customers have when they move away from IBM FileNet. Mostly it's due to a implementation that just doesn't work anymore. There has been put in a lot of efforts to create all kinds of customizations, to create some kind of workflow, and it's all in, for instance, Workplace XT. So it's mostly the users don't want to work with it anymore, and there has been a lot of effort. So that's actually sometimes why they don't want to move away, because someone has put their neck out to create these millions of dollars of customizations around the system. Anyway, I think it comes from a very old content management view, which is not applicable anymore, and you can't just create it. So that's mostly the pain point why they want to move away. Any BPF to ICM case studies you have? No, I have to be honest, we don't. So it's the Business Process Foundations and the IBM Case Manager, of course. I think if you want to migrate the content that is in there, we can easily do that. However, if you ask this because you might want to migrate workflow or running cases, things like that, from BPF to ICM, that is quite complex, and you should really look into that, if that is feasible in terms of time it takes to script all these things, and if even the system allows you to go into these workflow data. But if it's around content, we probably it would be then in FileNet anyway. So on content, yes, possible to migrate. On workflow, maybe, but you really should look into the complexity, and because workflow migrations are usually very complex and very time consuming, and then you need to build a good business case for that. Hope that answers the question. Any other questions? Okay.
I think that's it, Sjoerd.
All right. So if you want to hear more about the migration towards Case Manager, then just drop me an email. And for all the others, thank you for your time, and hope to see you next time.
Yes, thank you, Sjoerd. We'll send you the presentation and the recording of this session, I think tomorrow. So, and hope to see you next time. Thanks all for joining. Bye bye.